Hi, Trevor here. I'm going to go over how to install PaperCut version 19.15 on Ubuntu Linux 20.04 LTS on a Microsoft Server 2019 using Hyper-V. So we want to make sure that we change our secure boot to Microsoft UEFI Certificate Authority. I put a minimum 4 gigs of RAM and a maximum of 8, but you can make that whatever you'd like. I also have given it 2 processors, and I've enabled the migration feature for the processor version. I do have all integration services enabled, and I am on my default multiplexer virtual switch. So we're going to install Ubuntu, and I'm using an ISO, and the hard disk is just a default 127 gigabyte Hyper-V disk on generation 2. Okay, so we're at our install screen. I speak English and write in English, so I'm going to select English. Have an IP. Want to use the entire disk. So one of the things you need to know when setting up PaperCut on Linux is that for the username you do have to use PaperCut, and that is for the actual software installation. So for the name here, I'm going to just use PaperCut. Server name, I'm going to call it PaperCut MF Ubuntu 20 LTS. Helps if you spell it right. Username PaperCut. Password PaperCut. Password PaperCut. I'm going to install OpenSSH server. And I'm also going to install PowerShell. And we'll come back to this when everything's done installing and updating. Alright, so our install has finished, and we're going to reboot now. Well, looks like we need to adjust the setting. We're going to just move the hard drive up. There we go. Alright, then when we get to our login, we will continue with our installation. Okay, so we're at our login screen. Username is PaperCut. Password is PaperCut. And we still have a few upgrades. So we'll just update. And then we'll upgrade. Now, we have two options here for installing a GUI. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. I find it a little easier for managing things. We can just do a full-blown, just get the full Ubuntu desktop. But I'm going to go with a more slimmed down version. Once this finishes installing. There we go. I'm going to install the Light DM Manager. And then we'll come back after this has finished installing. Alright, so for our Display Manager, I'm going to be selecting Light DM. Okay, so we installed Light DM. Now let's install Unity. Of course, you can install whatever desktop you'd want. I'm just using this because that's what I used. So I'll let this install, and then we'll come back to it again. Okay, now let's so I'm going to install Ubuntu Desktop with no install recommends. Helps if I spell it right. Yes, I want to continue. And we'll come back after this has finished updating and installing. Okay, we have our desktop installed. We want to install the config manager. And for the last thing, we'll install Firefox. Because we need a web browser. And then once this is done, we'll restart. This will just take a minute or two. You can see we have our desktop. And we don't have our normal things you would have if you installed the full desktop. There's no OpenOffice, LibreOffice, Thunderbird, anything like that. We just have a very basic desktop. And I'm going to bring up the terminal by right-clicking and going Open Terminal, and then I'm going to lock it to the dock. So I'm just going to quickly customize my terminal settings. I'm going to make the font a little smaller. Adjust the terminal size. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to add PaperCut to the sudoers file because that's what's required for installing the PaperCut software. There we go. So down here under root, I'm going to put in PaperCut, all. And now I'm going to download the PaperCut installer. The URL for downloading the PaperCut software will be in the video description. Now this is not the latest version of PaperCut. There have been some updates, and if you're looking for doing this on the latest version, you can just replace the version number, and that should download with whichever the latest version that they have posted is. So we're going to edit our Samba file. Oh, silly me. So we're going to make some changes to the Samba config file under the print settings and the print user settings. So right here, printers and print is where you want to make your changes. Here we want to make the following changes. Put public equals no, available equals yes. Browsable no. Read only no. Guess okay. Yes. Alright, now that we've modified our Samba file, we can go ahead and install PaperCut, which is in our downloads directory. Gotta change the mode. And then we can run it. So this is the end user agreement. Now you'll notice that when I ran it, I didn't run sudo. If you do, you will find that you have a problem. And that it won't install. It'll make you rerun it as the regular user, which is why you have to add PaperCut to the sudoers file. This will just take a second. Almost done. Accept the terms. Install primary server. Yes. So we want to select option 2 because we do have sudo access. So this won't take too much longer. So there we go. Our installation is complete. Now if we go and turn on the num lock, should have been able to get there. I'm going to 127. So here, once you get there, you're going to be queued to install, set up a password and all that. I'm just going to use PaperCut. Depending on what you need. So if you're doing like a library, school, university, non-profit, that kind of thing, you may want to go with education. Depends on what you're looking for. So default costs, color, $1 page, 50 cents a page. Initial user credit, we'll just leave it at 0. How do we want to sync users? Unix, Samba, Google. So for right now, I'm just going to select Unix Standard. And we didn't set up any groups or anything. We can even skip this step, which actually is a pretty good idea. I'm going to do that, because I'm not quite ready to do users yet. So here we are. Put a link there on the desktop. Let's go to options. Because why couldn't we get there with... Yeah, there we are. Localhost worked. Must not have been, the server must not have been ready. Yeah, that's all it was. Server wasn't ready. Okay, we have our PaperCut server set up on our Hyper-V server as a virtual machine running on Ubuntu Linux 20.04 LTS. If you found this tutorial useful, if you liked the video, feel free to like, leave a comment below. Feedback is always welcomed.